Wow. The last few days, I took the weekend off because I hung out with my husband. It was really freaking nice. It was just nice. And there was a lot of frequencies this weekend, like a lot of frequencies this weekend. But how it affected me was just the growth of the hives. That was it. Saturday night was a lot of hives. And it wasn't like bad. It was itching. It was mostly on my back. Not a big deal. But that's how the frequencies affected me. Okay. And so, you know, I just keep marveling at the world that we live in, and it's a pretty crazy world that we live in. It literally is a pretty crazy world that we live in. And when you understand the world from a scientific point of view, and even an Old Testament biblical point of view, oh my God, oh my gosh, worlds open up. Like literally worlds open up. And I now understand why our society has been constructed the way it has been. I remember as a kid just wondering, like, is this all there is? This can't be all there is. There's so much more. And oh yeah, there is so much more out there in the world. Like so much more. And even more than those who are so well traveled even realize. Because when you're so well traveled out there, yes, you see different cultures. But it's the psychology of the people. It is the psychology of the people that gives you the insight on the cultures. Because what you're seeing is just a programming. That's what it is. When I go to China, I see a programming. I see the old world and I see the new world. They're both kind of clashing. And the old world is not going to survive. And those are the people that are impoverished, who are living the old ways, you know? And I look at the new world, and like when I was in China, seeing those two worlds clash, and it's all like high technology and all that. But even then, many parts of China will not survive in the future. It's only a matter of time. And everyone knows the writings on the wall because the Georgia Guidestones, which is the newest Bible when you think about the future, is that when you have a world of 500 million, many parts of China, India, Africa, I would even imagine too, and Europe, the Western world, and even the Northern European world will be eradicated. And 500 million is not a lot when you think about in comparison to 12.9 billion projected, but right now 8 billion. And so I was thinking about just third world countries, and I'm thinking about people I used to hang out with on my Facebook through the conspiracy world. And I see their names, and sometimes I even see their culture and the countries they come from. And I'm thinking, like, you know, now with this whole thing with the Middle East, and now we're seeing who's taking what side, and even people in a Judeo-Christian world, like America, taking a side against the Judeo-Christian people and against Israel. And then that makes things so much more interesting when you actually look at what people are advocating now that we have this conflict of the Middle East. And then you're like, it's so extraordinary to watch some of the Westerners kind of shift focus and sort of do a little dance, because before they were against America, of course, and against Israel, against the Jews of Israel. And now, you know, we are a Judeo-Christian society, and Christianity came from Judaism, okay? And so now what are you going to promote? A world of intolerance and a world of destruction and non-evolutionary, non-intellectual thought process, which is what I actually see the split when it comes to now the Middle East and the conflicts and, of course, the rest of the world. It is those that evolve and educate themselves and they're not even becoming tolerant. I mean, yeah, you can become tolerant, but that's not, it's really about educating yourself on all the arguments of the world, obviously not just taking a side. And so now you see the split between the uneducated, when you think about it, the ones that refuse to evolve, refuse to take in new information. And so they're getting literally fucked out of existence. Now, where did that come from? Okay, well, because if education is not your forte, if expanding your brain is not your forte, if understanding another culture and their thought process is not within your purview of within your purview as part of your life, then yes, you will be chasing pleasure. You'll be screwing yourself, screwing other people, literally and figuratively. Resisting change, so you'll be taking your iodine. You'll be taking all of your different remedies. Of course, all the surgeries. You'll be doing all the things to keep you in a cured state of existence so you don't ever have to change. And you'll also say food is poison, so you'll starve yourself. And you'll keep screwing yourself by taking in the remedies, which then develop offspring. So that's why they said, that's what Fuck is fornication under the consent of the king. Because the king would be the one to say whether or not they would want someone to go and divide and split the cells. What do you mean by that? Well, reproduction, sexuality, sex is about splitting cells. It's merging two people together, and yeah, you could develop a baby, yes, and that would they need to make it that genetic line stronger or weaker. And of course, the king is the one that's going to determine, because he has a lot of knowledge, and the people don't unless they go through all that education, and it takes a lot to get right up to the level of the king's knowledge. And so he's the one that says, okay, well, these people should get together and fuck and have a baby. And then, no, we can't have this, because if we have these people over here screwing together and they have major issues and whatever, you're going to weaken the people. And so, yeah, fornication under the consent of the king meant that the king knew how to not only nation build, but nation build a strong population. But what happens is we have people who are nation building on weak populations, intolerant populations, people who refuse to evolve. And therein lies the problem, is people are fornicating and developing babies on weak ass genetic lines, intolerant genetic lines. And so why I brought in the Georgia Guidestones is no more petty laws and useless officials. Is when we pull out of Afghanistan, pull out of different countries, stuff to maintain so that some kind of peace so they don't go and bomb us. But when we keep our hands off other countries, but we just change the climate. Hey, if you want to go and nation build and be all, intolerant and say that, Israel's this and Israel's that, or, America's this and America's that, and you want to be that intolerant and you still want to hold fast to your traditions of taking your remedies and your surgeries, because that's also fornication. When you get a surgery, you're getting penetrated by a knife that then splits the cells and causes offspring and also weakens that genetic line. So if you want to go and screw yourself out of existence with big families and surgeries and remedies and herbs and extracts and detoxes, then that's fine. We'll just raise the temperature, and you'll have so much conception in your body, so much fertility in your body, that your offspring, who are basically not well trained because the parent isn't well trained, will then be chaotic and cannibalize that society over a few generations. And that's what's going on right now. You're watching generations of people developing children who are cannibalizing themselves and society and their parents and the world actively at this point. And so it just dawned on me that, yes, no wonder the 1960s is all about porn and all about hot chicks and hot girls and the whole sexual revolution. That was the beginning of the kickoff of legitimizing the scale down of society through pleasure. Like literally through pleasure and through big families. And that's some crazy shit. But I knew there was something to it. I knew the 1960s, something to it. And I knew even way back in the 1930s, 1920s. With reefer madness and all of that. The flappers. Then, using Shirley Temple in some of those movies. And then in the 1950s, when that kind of scaled down society, along with innovation, because that also comes into play. When you develop so much life, just like when I develop so much life in my body because of the frequencies that I'm feeding my body, I get new awarenesses, new intellectual capability. and I release the old, and there's innovation right there just within my sphere of a body, influence, body, mind, spirit, whatever. Imagine times that to magnitudes of like thousands and millions of people who are allowed to evolve through so many different ways, through bioengineering and climate change and different things, and education. I mean, it's extraordinary when you finally look at the bigger picture. It's fucking extraordinary. And so I didn't even post, like, I didn't put like all the things like on my post because I had so many. I'm just like, now I'm just like, holy crap, I'm just swimming in the information in my head, because I knew that sex and developing girls to be sexual objects for men as well as women, and men to be sexual objects for men and women and whoever, that was another type of depopulation. And so, yes, you can program these girls to be hot and intellectual in the West Coast if you get specific training, but then you go to different places that don't have a lot of intellectual capability. I mean, they do on some level relative to the economy, but then you have girls that are just hot, that just enter into beauty pageants, and that's pretty much all they're good for. Beauty pageants, maybe they get a degree, so they get, they have education, they look credible, and then they go and build families and have a bunch of kids. That's pretty much the extent of the role of women in modern Western society, is that they're beautiful, hot, sexual, maybe a little bit intellectually capable, and if not, then they have all the different alternative lifestyles or whatever, or they go get married and have a bunch of babies. And you've seen all the different cultures out there, and some are a bit more aggressive than others. And so, I mean, I'm going to read this, and then I'm just going to go down my timeline, because I remember that when I talked about Universe 25, and I did write so much about Universe 25 a couple years ago when somebody was trying to help me edit, and I wrote so much about it. I was like making my own assertions, my own hypothesis on what John Bumpus Calhoun was also theorizing or analyzing the behaviors of those mice in that rat experiment. And that's where the Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats of Nim came from, the book we read back in the 1980s. That's, the Nim, the Rats of Nim. Yeah, the rats of PubMed, the lab rats. Well, he did that experiment, maybe 20, I forget how many times. It was from the 1950s and 1970s. And every single time, the overpopulation led to extinction. I mean, overpopulation. Well, I wouldn't say overpopulation, because that would be the wrong term. Reproduction. Massive amounts of reproduction in that rat society turned into all-out extinction. They fucked themselves out of existence. That rat population did. That's why then, when they realized that experiment ended up the same way all the time, that those rats fucked themselves out of existence, literally reproduced themselves out of existence, that's what then led to the 1960s. And then they figured out the most beautiful woman in the world, big tits, big boobs, skinny body, so much hair. She had to be educated, so at least hold the interest of the man, right? Because you couldn't have a stupid hot chick, because how long would that take? That would be just like having a prostitute. If you want to carry on someone's consistent scaling down and then having a bunch of kids, got to make them relatively educated, a little bit interesting, and also pull out any resources of innovation out of them through those times. Then that makes complete sense why the 1960s came around. And then all the different experimentations, all the different ones. And so, I'm just like, I don't even know what to say. I don't even know what to fucking say. And then, of course, all the campaigns of the fear about food. And, of course, then, yes, the V's. The VACCINESs, that's like a penetration. Having a bunch of kids, you get penetrated by one person or many people, right? When you're taking all your herbal remedies and antibiotics and all that, that's other kind of offspring. You're penetrating your body with antibiotics to develop offspring called antibodies. And then, of course, the programming of those offspring antibodies relative to the intention. So if you're trying to stop your body from coughing out mucus, then you're programming that medicine to go and attack your ability to release the mucus out of your body. And so you develop an offspring that is geared to disabling your immune system or deactivating parts of your immune system, like your coughing mechanism, your sneezing mechanism, your shitting mechanism, closing up your orifices, like closing up your lymph nodes. So when you're taking something that's like a topical, you're developing offspring that are geared and programmed to close up your lymph nodes and your armpits. You know, this weekend when I had those hives and I'm like taking my little back scratcher and just itching everywhere, I'm going like, fuck! But I'm like, hey, whatever. And I was snoring a lot too this weekend, my husband was telling me. I felt my lymph nodes open. They were a little bit sore. Actually, it was on the left side. They were sore. But that was kind of funny because I wasn't like sick per se, but I had the hives, and my husband and I were watching a bunch of movies. We were hanging up upstairs, just hanging out in bed, and we were just, because our TV's still broken, we'll fix it one day. So he took the fire stick, we took it upstairs. We're watching so many movies. We're watching, yes, Devil in Ohio and other stuff. And I remember like falling asleep to it. So I already watched it, but I wanted him to see it. And I'm like catching myself snoring, and then he even recorded me snoring. So I even had to sleep really heavily last night because, or not last night. Well, yeah, I did last night, but also on Saturday night because I was also dealing with a lot of growth. Okay. And I wasn't going to disable my immune system. My immune system had to work that growth and put it into the filtration systems and then eventually out all the different orifices. But that's the thing. So people are literally fucking themselves out of existence and developing offspring that are working against them, whether it's their children working against them, yes, because the children take so much resources. Grandchildren, of course, take resources away from the parents, grandparents. We don't call it that, but hey, I mean, if you know balance, then you'll save yourself, grandma, and you'll still be able to provide something, some kind of guidance to your offspring, but you can't obviously, I mean, if you intend to live indefinitely, you can't sacrifice yourself to them. But that's the thing, is that these little offspring in the body, mind, and spirit are programmed now to disable and deactivate your immune system from doing what it's supposed to do. And so I said, no more petty laws and useless officials, because the climate is going to determine now. The climate will be judge, jury, and executioner. And I think that's great, because that way no one is being blamed for, when you think about it, for saying you go left and you go right when it comes to 1945 and the cattle cars. Now you're being told, okay, yes, there's climate change. We've been telling you this for freaking years. I've been telling you, you need to now figure out how you're going to pull out the cancer out of your ass, pull out the pain out of your ass, pull out the aging process out of your ass, and eat food and feel the pain of the body expressing itself. And I'm not making any claims that I'm saying you're going to be pain-free, because I can't guarantee that. And I can't even guarantee you'll live indefinitely. But I can't guarantee you give you a fighting fucking chance, right? If you understand food and are not afraid of it and telling everybody that food is poison, which you see all over my Facebook. People are saying, oh, food is poison, eat my food. Because they're selling you something, they're selling you shit. Of course, there's so much money in the activist world when you put fear of food in people, then you have something to sell them. Oh, here, eat my organic bullshit. Here, eat my supplements. As they're starving to death. So the climate will determine your tolerance or intolerance. No more petty laws and useless officials, because the climate will be judge, jury, and executioner. Antibodies equals offspring. Okay? So if you're taking cannabis so you don't feel shit, you're developing antibodies that are opening up your serotonin until it finally completely decimates you. When you don't have any more serotonin or oxytocin, then you become mean, because you just used up your body's hormones that were there for a certain thing, and you've abused it through the drugs. And so now you have offspring that are going to work against you and start cannibalizing you. Because when there's no more of the serotonin and the oxytocin for it to release so you feel pleasure from your drugs, then the infrastructure, then the body is being cannibalized by those offspring. Who are like, well, there's no more of this, so we're going to eat this. We'll go and eat this. Just like, out there in the wild. If you're out there in the wild and there's no more berries, and you go find another kind of berry or another kind of food source. That's evolution. And so now you have little offspring that were geared for giving you pleasure, right? Through the serotonin and oxytocin and all that stuff. And then they had to evolve and eat then the blood vessels around your heart to weaken your heart. And then even the cartilage in your bones. And then people are breaking their bones. So antibodies equals offspring. Growth is cell division. Thermodynamics uses up energy, needs food. Life comes from fornication at the micro level, and when you want to scale down life, it's aggressive fornication at the macro level. Now look at OnlyFans, YouTube, Instagram, the porn sites. These men who have absolutely no control over themselves, and then they're also developing artificial intelligent women who will then cause men to lose their seeds. Because they're jacking off to images all over the freaking, internet. And so, yeah, artificial intelligence will also help release the demons when you think about it. Every single time a cell splits, both cells become weak. Food is the answer, and the strongest cells are left standing during climate change. And that's what you're seeing right now, too. How many people are now are suffering, dying, treating their disease until one day there's nothing to be treated. They can't treat their disease anymore. There would be nothing left. Like literally nothing left. And so the last person left standing. So right now, people who are alive have survived the climate change thus far, but there's no guarantee the next climate shift are going to be left standing. But you can predict by looking at their body, their mind, and their spirit, and their belief systems, and how they treat disease and their fear of food, what's going to happen the next couple rounds. And they're punching air. They're activists on their Facebook. And they're aging out aggressively. Okay? And so imagine multiplying cell division by hundreds of thousands of generations. Obviously, the weakest generations would die off, right? And the strongest one is left standing. So look at the family, and everyone is starving because not only do they have a big family, but they have so many little microbial families in their body eating them out from the inside. Yes, your kids are cute, but will they survive this crazy reset? Because people are like, oh, look at my kids, so cute. Look at my beautiful family. And they're taking nice pictures. Okay, yeah, your kids are cute. But you see then my post where you saw there's kids that are like running in marathons, or they're scientists at 20-something years old, or they're weightlifters, or they're rugby players. Okay? And when you're grooming your kid to be any of those things, and they have deficits in a highly accelerated environment, and the mother's afraid of food, and they hardly have any fat because they're working out so much, died suddenly. There is no guarantee, especially in this environment, that these grandkids and children are going to survive climate change. Unless a grandmother or mother is the one that redirects everything that's going on, and potentially even saves herself. But see, they said they did a study on whales, that if the grandmother dies, then the mother and the grandchild are not too far behind, or the child and the grandchild are not too far behind. Now look at my grandmothers out there who are passing away, who are dying. What do you think, what kind of future do you think is there for her children and her grandchildren in this environment? See, yeah, maybe the grandmother's like maybe 50, 60. And maybe she has 10 years or maybe less, who knows? It's hard to say nowadays with how people are getting treated so much. But that's because she came from a more of a stable background relative to this background. Imagine now kids today who are kids getting treated in a highly accelerated environment, plus then all the predisposed issues they inherited from grandmother and grandfather and mother and great-grandparents and all that. Imagine, I would say their lifespan would be less than what their potential could have been in a different environment, like their parents' and grandparents' environment back in 1980s, 2000s. See, but people don't think that way. They don't think that way because, again, we're dealing with people who are dying. That's what I'm saying. Be careful of listening to people who are dying, who are afraid of the air, food, and water, who have intolerances around what's going on with the Middle East, and they live in a first world, they're given everything, and they don't fucking appreciate it. Be careful listening to those people who live like in Oregon, who live in a nice area, probably, and they are deteriorating, selling you protection from life as they are deteriorating, and of course they're going to blame things. But again, remember, dying people follow dying people. That's the nature of death. Death is so attractive and it's beautiful. Death is beautiful. That's death and reproduction. That's the family. And then remember the Manson family. Remember the Manson family and how he destroyed Sharon Tate, and she was representation of the future. And then you saw how charismatic Charles Manson was and how he attracted so many followers. And he knew the power of sex, the power of the LSD and drugs to manipulate people into doing his bidding to the point of even destroying for him. And now look at families today. Look at the matriarchs. Look at the patriarchs acting just like a Charles Manson, but in a different way. Here, take my supplement. Take my detox. Take my cannabis. Take my herbal remedy. No, we're not going to use a long 6-inch knife and destroy someone in their pregnant belly. No, here, just take a bunch of these concoctions that will develop offspring that will deactivate your immune system. So you have now so much life inside of you that you can't manage it, and it will destroy you from the inside. And there's no amount of food unless you release and sit with the pain is going to help you. Because look at the people in the nursing homes. They're eating food and ain't doing shit for them. They're not starving them in the nursing homes. But you see then what people have done. They have made food just something to go through like a garbage disposal. And so no, we don't have the Charles Mansons like him in the exact way that he was. But now we have gurus out there. Spiritual leaders, pickup artists. People who are completely emaciated selling you life when they are dying. And they're fucking suffering. That's what Charles Manson represents. Because remember him, how skinny he was. Remember how skinny he was. And now you have them all over Facebook selling you life when they're dying. That's World War III. It's all over your family, your friends. Oh, it's extraordinary to freaking watch. Oh my God. It's extraordinary to watch. And I'm telling you, the gurus out there, the health and wellness gurus out there, the yoni gurus are like all about their vagina, telling you how you should be okay with your vagina. They're a dime a dozen, selling you yoga poses and, ayahuasca, get in touch with your hormones, go see God or spirituality. They are all over Facebook, or they're selling you, oh my God. Yeah, selling you spirituality. As they're doing their yoga poses and doing this and everything and balancing crystals on their nose and saying, hey, look, this is how you can now, become absolved of whatever and will help you get to Pleiades or some other place over there of the rainbow. I'm telling you, the 1960s was the major kickoff of the acceleration of people getting fucked out of existence through their body, mind, and spirit, through all the remedies, through all the family. I mean, you think about even those that are like pro-life. I'm all pro-life, but they're getting oncology. They're trying to save the woman by having, or save humanity by having babies, when actually it's quite the opposite. Then you have those who are pro-abortion, which I understand, save the woman and save her career, save her life, I guess. But then she gets penetrated by somebody else, twice penetrated and getting life taken out of her. And so both of those worlds are still getting screwed because they're not understanding the bigger picture. And so, yes, and so people who take both those sides of pro-life or pro-choice, it doesn't matter. The mother's getting screwed, period. The human's getting screwed unless you understand what the bigger picture is. You were never made to win on any of those arguments because now they have accelerated the atmosphere. So now growth is so destructive. And people can't manage the growth in their body. They can't manage the growth in their family. They can't manage their growth anywhere. They're afraid of food. And here we go. Here we are. We are in a major, major scale down that has been accelerated. It was already put in place back in the world wars. But it's been accelerated astronomically since the climate change. And so when you think about the giants of antiquity, or even way back when the Jews left Israel, and yeah, they were cursed. I read that story. They were cursed to wander the desert for 40 years, and until, Caleb and David and Joshua went and said, okay, we're going to go and fight the giants and go reclaim. No, not reclaim. Yeah, claim the land of Israel. They wanted that area. They wanted that area. Why do they want that area? Because that was an area where they had water, right next to like a bunch of water. Okay. And so they conquered the giants. They set free the people. Well, people don't probably think of themselves as enslaved, but yeah, when you have a bunch of giant people that are enslaving people and eating them and torturing them, you think about the pharaohs. There was one picture of somebody in a group, not a picture of somebody, but they have a picture of a pharaoh that was torturing an Asian invader, like a Mongol. Okay, so you can only imagine you can not even imagine. You just watch that on the movies. Watch what happened way back then. They have movies like 300, which is a movie about 300 BC or something, and other movies of what the pharaohs may have done, what some of the kings way back when must have done, some of the emperors like Caligula, what they have done. There's some pretty atrocious stuff. And I'm sure these humans that were not only deteriorating in their brain, but they're inheriting those ways from the giants of yore. So when David beat Goliath, that sealed it for the Jews of Israel, right? Generations of people did not forgive the Jews of Israel because the losers of the war who loved their oppressors, the Nephilim giant, couldn't forgive them. Because the losers of the war loved their oppressors, the Nephilim giants, and they couldn't forgive them, of course. Now you see why the split in our society. And what gets me is that people in America who don't like Biden, okay, the reason why we're giving money to Ukraine because of Russia doesn't like, this is where I get kind of tripped out, because there could be the leaders of like Putin, and there's leaders in the Ukraine, like that guy, whatever his name is, Zelensky, I forget his name. Okay? And so Putin and Zelensky and all that, they all could be developing these wars. This is just my theory. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It could be developing these wars to bring out what's already in their people. So if people in Russia don't like the Jews, then there's going to be whatever there's going to be. Zelensky, whatever. That's Ukraine. There's a lot of Jews in Ukraine. So we have to help people who are being oppressed by whatever. But maybe there's a lot of leaders out there that know they have a population of people who are intolerant, they can't evolve. And if they want to live, if the leaders want to live and, I don't say rule over, but be not like a useless official, but be something of maybe even a figurehead, they're going to have to take part in whatever script that's being run and bring out the intolerance in their population and see who survives. Okay? And so, if people are like, we're heading into a world war. I mean, some of the countries like Saudi Arabia, they're on board with what's going on for America and Israel because they want to survive. And there are populations that are so way behind the eight ball, but will stay within their confines. Let's say Afghanistan. The Taliban, they do whatever they got to do. Okay, they're not going to be they're not going to be a major threat. Okay, but who's a major threat right now? They can't live side by side with people they resented for thousands of years. Well, that's the whole Gaza Strip. If you can't accept somebody next to you that's different, then there's got to be a war, and it's coming out. The script is being played out right now, and you're watching all the intolerant people in the West who have been given everything under the fucking sun. A place to live, a job to have, food to eat, clean water, clean plumbing, and they are completely just ripping the American government and the West and Israel a new asshole right now. And then people who live like in the Philippines who are Muslim. Okay, nothing wrong with that. And they are acting so freaking intolerant. Talking about bloodlines. I'll get to that in a minute. So I'm going to read this. So, now you see why the split in our society. And believe me, I get it because I had to free myself from the oppression of the system and my peers, and they resented me for it. By the way, bloodlines do not matter. But to those who are intolerant, like that person in the Philippines, who, yes, wears the head thing, which is great, fine. She has a child. She has a husband, I guess. And she's posting all over Facebook how it's all about bloodlines and the fake Jews. And I'm like, she's in the freaking Philippines. She's being given air, food, and water. And she has some kind of nerve to have an opinion what goes on over in Israel and what goes on. She has a place to freaking live. She's in the Philippines and she has food to eat. Her kids are safe. No one's bombing her. Who is she to have any kind of opinion about what goes on over there? If she wants to fight for them, she should go to Gaza Strip and go fight for her Muslim people if she's really that devoted to the Palestinians. I don't see her going over there, but it's so convenient for these keyboard warriors to have a fucking say over here in their country in the Philippines and in the UK and Europe and America. See, So, by the way, bloodlines don't matter, but to those who are intolerant, bloodlines do matter, and they will not change ever, which is okay for me because when the climate changes, they will divide themselves out of existence by their own hand because blood is developed by antibodies and evolution and culture, and we all know that can change. Old antibodies and old evolution and old cultures can go to the wayside, and people move all the time. Humans have migrated for millions and millions of years, and cultures intermix, cultures evolve. Some cultures were eradicated and fucked out of existence because they were so intolerant. They divided so many times they diluted themselves. And those are the Neanderthals. If you're all about bloodline, when the climate changes, will your bloodline survive? If that's how you want to play it, that's all about bloodline. Keep having babies, especially during climate change, because your babies will become weaker and weaker and weaker, just like the parent. That's what I'm saying. If you are going to conscript your daughter into servitude of being a husband or wife to someone who wants to have a bunch of babies, then you have no room to say that you're being a slave because you just enslaved your daughter and your son into marriage to have a bunch of children because you want to have a grandbaby because that gives you social capital. That's cannibalization. That's family cannibalization. If that's how you want to play it, it's all about bloodline. Keep having babies, especially during climate change. Because your babies will become weaker and weaker and weaker, especially with all the traditions out there. But Jillian, there's some people that can have babies and be, okay. Remember, 2045, everyone's going to be basically sterile. Like most people are going to be, and the system is going to develop the children and raise them relative to the needs of the system. You already see that coming. You already heard that coming. So you better be the best copy ever, or else the weakest person in your family is going to die off. And we know that's going to happen. And people are going to resent it, but that's going to happen because you can't make people change. You can't make them strong if they don't want to be. If they resist strength and they want to be weak, well, you see how that is all over Facebook, right? And so if that's how you want to play it, that's all about bloodline. Keep having babies, especially during climate change, because your babies will become weaker, weaker, and weaker, especially with all the traditions out there. Remember, you chose to be tolerant. You want a nation build? You want to nation build during the climate change? We'll see. I wouldn't trade the last 12 years for anything because I really see the true nature of some of the people on my Facebook that I used to be an activist with. When I'm finally on the outside looking in, I see why evolution had to happen throughout human life. The Neanderthals had to leave because they were cannibalizing people, eating human flesh. They had to be fucked out of existence. Now look at your Facebook at those who are intolerant, and they are from all different countries, third world countries, even some in the first world. Look at their intolerance. But people are fucking themselves out of existence, and fucking yourself up can be done through remedies, healing world, and also culturally, because when you advocate big families during climate change with bodies in deficit, what do you think is going to happen to your children down the line? And eventually they won't exist anymore. Who in that family, that bloodline, is going to change and evolve? If no one does, over time, your family and you will be gone, and everyone in your downline. And that's what MLMs are. They have a downline, so you're like the head, right? You're Adam, okay? And then you're going to go and convert people to go and be a downline, someone that's going to sell your product, and then you get a little piece of the action. That's all pyramid, right? And so that's essentially what families are, is that they keep converting, keep reproducing. But what happens during a climate change and culture and traditions, especially around the remedies world and surgeries and operations, every generation, new generation becomes weaker and weaker. And that's why you're seeing autism. That's why you're seeing all the different cancer disease and chronic illness and autoimmune disorders, because of the amount of reproduction. And that could be sexual reproduction, and that could also be treating somebody to such a level. What do you mean treating somebody? Well, when they have a cold, you're applying them with elderberry syrup, with all the different remedies. So they're developing offspring that are cannibalizing and weakening that genetic line, weakening that infrastructure. Okay. Oh, it's so extraordinary what's going on. I mean, I wouldn't trade the suffering I went through the last 12 years for anything. I would not trade the suffering the last 7 years for anything. I would not, because now it's so amazing to watch when the shoe's on the other foot. Okay? And so I'm going to go down my timeline. Okay. And so maybe the modern humans screwed the Neanderthals and starved them out of existence, because remember, modern humans were living amongst the Neanderthals. So what happened to all the Neanderthals? Well, what happened to all the giants? Not only were they probably screwed out of existence through all the remedies and concoctions, and maybe even starved out of existence, because the humans got together and figured out not only to destroy them, but also find a way to psychologically starve them. And even you saw with the petrified forest, or what is it, that big tree of life that turned into the Devil's Tower. That whole world was eradicated. It's the human world now. The giant world's gone. How could a giant world be gone when they were so strong? Because humans had to be stronger by being strategic. They had to figure out and strategize, because they were slaves for so many years. And when you suffer under the regime of giants, then you learn how to survive, and you figure out psychologically how to fuck with people who are not very intelligent. Because what else? I mean, you let stupidity replicate itself and it'll completely, extinct humanity, or the strongest is going to survive, the most strategic. Because again, let me give you back to that example of two people playing racquetball. You have a giant, well, you have a larger male playing racquetball with a smaller female. How is that smaller female going to beat a larger male? It's not going to be through brute force, because she doesn't have that. So what does she have? She has strategy. She figures out how to skim that ball so tightly between the corner and the floor, right at the bottom. And so that giant can't go and that giant human or that big guy can't go and just dive, because he'll hurt himself. And so she wins every single time through that strategy. That's what it takes. So brute force is not everything. It's human ingenuity is what saved humanity. And so anyways, and so now look at who's intolerant in your world today, and they will be modernized out of existence by their own choice. Neanderthals had a cannibalistic practice of eating each other, spanning a time of about 80,000 years, from 120,000 to 40,000 years ago. Eating raw brains and flesh may have contributed to the Neanderthal extinction because of potentially deadly diseases. And they're not releasing the demons. And there's probably no other, information besides, what they learned from how to, how to go hunt. I mean, if you're hunting humans, whether it's spiritually, verbally, virtually, that's no different than a Neanderthal. Trolls act like Neanderthals because they hunt humans spiritually. And they try to cannibalize them. So when you think about what goes on, people have like 2%, 3% Neanderthal in their body, right? Now, since I'm Asian, I have about, a percentage of Neanderthal and Denisovan in my bloodline because of being Asian. But I have 97% modern human. I'm not going to let my Neanderthal side of me, which part of me was when people were fucking with me. But I wasn't hunting humans and cannibalizing them. I was just doing the J world and saying, okay, eat food or whatever it was I was saying back then. It was then the Neanderthals of our society came in, and they were even part of my mods, that when I wanted to bring people in and they're like, no, or they were feeling symptoms, we were like, oh my God, it's harming me and this and that. Then the Neanderthals in people came out and they started hunting me and cannibalizing me and everybody that was around me, just torturing people through virtual. But if they're given the chance, they would slice somebody up and eat them for dinner if they could. That's how fast humans can go right down to their Neanderthal behavior. That's how fast humans can degrade down to caveman behavior, because that's still within their genetic line, and that's what's now being released. And that's why the Jews are so important in Israel. That's why America is so important. That's why the West is so important. That's why Klaus Schwab is so important. That's why Biden is so important. Because we're going to breed out those who virtually and literally hunt and cannibalize their fellow man because they are different and because they're hungry and they can't feed themselves besides eat other humans. They can't do things on their own. They have to cannibalize another person. That's the easiest go-to. That's Neanderthalic behavior, is when you are developing so many families, right, and so many people that you have to depend upon so you can siphon their resources. Even if you love them or hate them, it doesn't matter. You are still trying to feed off someone through love and hate. It's when that person realizes that they're being fed off of, that they cut the fucking cord. Now you see what's going on, right? Oh, here we go. Okay. So, yeah, people in the J world way back when were saying, yeah, they had some kind of remission or some kind of, shrinking of their cancer cells during the whole J world process. Well, I can't say correlation equals causation. The J world might have been a factor in shrinking their cancer cells, but there's no guarantee that was the actual thing. And I couldn't make a claim across the board that it would do that, because again, everyone's different. You could be activating somebody's cancer, but then also activating it to release out of the body, but they'd have to understand how to release. So when I activate someone's immune system, yeah, they better have a release process that is well functioning, so that way they can activate what's already in their body and release the demons. And you need food and all that. And so if they can sometimes detect cancer in your stool, then over time you can literally pull cancer aging process out of your ass. And you can also eat food to release the cancer out of your ass, out of all the different orifices, and release the cancer out of the surface of your body if you allow it to express. Potentially avoiding treating it. Slippery slope. Remember, I'm not saying don't treat your disease. If you have to treat your disease because of so many reasons, do it. And especially if you're skinny. If you're skinny, you have to treat yourself until you can. Because, I don't know, can a person handle eating food, feeling the pain, having to eat a lot of food during that process? Would they have the time? Would their loved one have the time? And so if they're down more, getting their life back and not producing for their friends and family, is that taking away their life more than if they would treat the disease and be a slave to their friends and family and potentially, live 5 more years, but give $5,000 more to somebody else to them treating their own disease? Or if they saved themselves and they ate food and they got away from their friends and family who were dependent upon them by giving them money, that they would actually have more time to live and even survive. But yeah, their friends and family would starve without them, but that's their friends and family's fault. They have to depend upon somebody else. And so you as a human have to figure out how you're going to balance out sacrifice yourself for your friends and family or saving your own ass. And that's what people are facing right now. And so you can also cough, sneeze, and blow your nose and throw up cancer out of your body if you don't screw yourself with all the remedies stopping your body from releasing. And food has a double benefit for you, because not only does it give you the nutrition to rebuild your DNA, but it also gives you a carrier force to release the demons. And if you're allergic to food, it means you need to learn how to open up your immune system and cough, sneeze, and blow your nose, because all that growth from immune system activation could clog up your windpipes, which means you need to condition your body to open up and accept food, not reject it, and release. And I did that this weekend, coughing and sneezing and blowing my nose and releasing the demons. And when in the mornings, I definitely release the demons. I definitely help it out too, because you need to. That's just part of it all, is make sure you get it all out, and you blow your nose and you cough. And sometimes the coughing and the sneezing and blowing your nose helps the leverage of the pressure of pushing things throughout your alimentary canal. And sometimes you feel it, the sweat. Like I feel the heat. When I eat food, I feel the heat. In the morning when I have to go use the restroom, I feel the heat because the body knows that now it's time to release, and I feel the heat. Okay? And so it's amazing now when you finally can feel the heat of your body going through its mechanisms that you know it's working correctly. And it's not a diagnosable condition unless you want to die, because then you'll treat yourself to death and deactivate your immune system. And so I welcome feeling everything in my body going through its natural processes. And it's like the machines, so RPMs. And so they're higher RPMs when I'm eating, because it's going through, the machine's going through the process. When I'm releasing, higher RPMs, and so I feel the temperature, I feel sweat. Like this weekend when my body was producing that growth. There's a lot of fornication going on in my body. Not so much with my husband and I, but there's a lot of fornication going on in my body, and so that's when all the growth of the hives, and I was sweating a little bit, like on the bridge of my nose, up around here, because we were watching movies, and I know there was growth going on because I could feel the hives. I was itching, and then my husband was trying to tickle me too sometimes, and whatever, and we have our own fun, and that's cool. And so but that's the thing, that's immune system activation. But I will not let anyone fuck me out of existence. And that's what it comes down to in relationships. Because, yeah, you could be in a marriage. Doesn't mean your marriage is any better than someone who's a prostitute if you're screwing somebody every fucking day. Every other day. Or so many times on the weekend. You see, that's what people don't realize, that even there's a war in marriages that are peaceful. Because somebody is willingly giving up their body, mind, and spirit to somebody else. It's within the contract. Okay? And so even though I'm married, I'm not going to allow my husband to fuck me out of existence. I'm not going to take my resources from my husband out of it. No. He needs to keep those resources. And then, we're in a marriage, so we have an occasional playing with the hormones, but I'm not going to let anyone die from abuse of the hormones in the body. I will not allow anyone to fuck me out of existence. I will not fuck somebody out of existence. And I want people to understand that if you really, truly respect the person that you're with, you will not fuck them out of existence in body, mind, and spirit. Now, we know that people go outside of marriages because they have to get their fucking freak on. Well, that's their own problem. But it's actually better for the partner that they're fucking somebody over there, because now that partner is being saved from being fucked by their own wife who needs it so much, or husband. But then that also brings in other issues, which of course we know infidelity is an offense. But if you're with somebody who cannot control their hormones and they have to go and cheat on you, you don't want them anyways. Not because you need them to screw you, because there's no trust, they don't have control over their hormones, and they totally disrespecting you on so many levels. Okay? And so, but that's everyone's private situation. But I'm watching on Facebook, they're like, oh yeah, there's places where people go and have orgies. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We're in a time now where people are literally getting screwed out of existence. Literally getting screwed out of existence. It's insane to watch. It's really, just watch your Facebook. Look at all the different articles of girls that are so proud of have 300 guys in 1 year. Girls are all over Facebook showing off everything. You know what's going on in their world. They literally want to get screwed out of existence. It's a trip to watch. And the mothers are also putting their kids on the auction block, putting their daughters on the auction block in their scantily clad clothing and whatever. They're selling their daughters on the open market. It's a trip to fucking watch. I can't even get mad at it, because that's exactly what needs to happen at this point. Because we have bred so many people who are in such deficit that it's now the natural order of things. And the system is just supporting the natural order of things. And so I can't even get mad. But I want you to see it. I want you to observe it. I want you to observe it because it's so extraordinary to watch. It's like watching Mutual of Omaha, Wild Kingdom, way back on the Channel 9 in the 1980s. Watching humans in their habitat of being screwed out of existence. It's a trip. It's a trip to watch. And there's costumes attached to it. Okay. All right. Okay, let me just drink some coffee. Because now I'm like, you know what? You can't stop it. I can't even get mad at it. But you can watch what happens in families. That's why you have Facebook, because it's better than fucking TV. Reality is so much better than TV. I swear to God it is. Many people have conditioned their bodies to reject food, not accept it, which is why people are dying suddenly today, and it doesn't matter what kind of therapy status they are in. Climate change is fucking everybody up who are deficient and can't handle the food. Well, of course. Climate change is what made the Neanderthals extinct because they were screwed out of existence and they couldn't handle the food supply. Or they would still be here. But nope, I think the modern humans figured out how to get them out. Because they weren't going to evolve to be a civilized. They were eating humans. They were cannibalizing them. And now you look on Facebook and see who are attacking who's saying who is not the real Jew and who's not and who is. That's Neanderthal behavior. When you're saying that this person's not a real Jew, this person's not a real human, that's Neanderthal behavior. You're gonna get fucked out of existence through climate change, through all your traditions. You're still in your own fate by talking that bullshit. Climate change would made the Neanderthals extinct because they were screwed out of existence and they couldn't handle the food supply. Can you imagine Neanderthals saying no to meat and milk and cheese because they had an allergic reaction to it because they weren't conditioned to accept food, only rejected because they couldn't handle the evolution? Maybe some modern human told the Neanderthals food was poison, eat just grass, just like today. Now look at all people around you like, oh, food's poison, just eat grass. Just eat air sandwiches, be a breatharian. Oh yeah, and screw all these girls over here and screw all these boys over here and have a bunch of kids. Yeah, okay. And so you need meat, you need milk, cream, meat, cheese, fruits, veggies, fats, carbs, gluten, sugar, electrolytes, processed foods, GMO foods, you need all that shit. Death comes from starvation, all death. But again, you know how people are. They screw themselves out of their own life because they don't want to take the time to be sick and cough and sneeze and blow their nose and do what it takes to actually live and survive the death process. And so here's the thing. My world is the answer for those who can handle the pain of life and has the patience and emotional and physical and biological and intellectual support system around them. Because yeah, when you're fighting your friends and family and they're trying to ply you with remedies and taking you to oncology and rewarding you for destroying yourself, you don't have a fucking chance because you're so desperate for their validation. You don't have a fucking chance. And that's why families can help you or hurt you. And of course, everything's relative and everything can be subjective. And so this thing about testing for cancer in stool, because that's what made me think about that because yeah, the whole J world's about pulling out the crap. I did that ever since day one. When I was working at this place called Timken as a temp, and I was just beginning the J world, right before the J world. It was in the summer. It was in the summer after I came back from my parents. So I visited them in Southern California. And then I quit that one job, went to another one because this other one, I guess, I don't know. I decided to go temp again somewhere else. And that summer of 2016, and I was doing all the supplements, of course, and I was doing the J juice, of course, and I was pulling out the crap. Even that summer of 2016, because I was so constipated from the J juice, right? Because there's so much of the salt that it cured me. And it cured the shit in my body. It constipated the hell out of me. So I had to find a way to pull it out. What else I was going to do? What I was going to do? Sit there and be bloated and feel like I'm full of shit? No. So I was pulling out crap since the summer of 2016. And then the whole J juice in October of 2016 was when that whole thing kicked off. And people doing waterfalls. I mean, in those waterfalls, when you're doing so many waterfalls, then you're curing yourself. But then what you're doing is you're trapping those beasts within. You're trapping those little offspring within that even though they're cured and they're behind like a salt type of border, like the vampires, right? Eventually that cure wears off and then those little babies inside, those little vampires inside metastasize. They start dividing again and dividing and dividing and dividing, or multiplying, whatever you want to call it. Dividing and multiplying, and then metastasize, and then the next frequency change. You feel stuff. And then people start releasing all their demons, but they're not eating. See, the thing was with the J juice, they were doing so much J juice and they weren't eating. They were getting skinnier, just like I was. Remember that? You've seen pictures on Facebook Reels where I was so skinny. So I was doing so much J juice, not eating any sugar or hardly any meat, hardly any carbs. I was gluten-free, sugar-free, everything free. So I was skinny. Yeah, I looked hot and the filters made me look even better. But I could not get away with being skinny like that, doing so much J juice like that back then. Today, I would die today. I would have been dead today if I would have kept doing the J juice and not eating the food. I would have been dead. And I know that because I know what I dealt with the last 3 years, all that growth. Because as soon as the climate changed and the growth already was in my body, that stayed in my body because I cured it with the J juice, well, it bloomed so quickly overnight that if I didn't have the infrastructure to develop to handle that growth and release, I would have died from a heart attack, stroke, or who knows, or have some kind of diagnosable condition, or some kind of crazy growth that would look like a tumor. I've had different lipomas that I felt around my body, and they're gone. All right, and so the test isn't always accurate as far as stool samples. So pulling out the cancer and the aging process and disease was literally the whole J world, with so much controversy around it. And so the stool test isn't always accurate. It's possible for a stool DNA test to show signs of cancer, but no cancer is found with other tests. Doctors call this a false positive result. It's also possible for the test to miss some cancers, which is called a false negative result. So, I mean, it's not really false. It just means that would you be within the magnitude to where they would recommend treatment? Everybody has certain kind of cancer cells. It's how influential and how fast moving is what makes them then an aggressive or stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. Okay? So you could be stage 0, still have cancer cells, but they're not very fast moving. And so, yeah, people can, if you make the test more sensitive, you would have positives everywhere. If you make it less sensitive based upon certain criteria, then that's what they base it on. And sometimes, some days, you may have more cancer representation in your stool because the body's releasing it. Doesn't mean that you have cancer. It just means the body's releasing it. But then when you start testing your stool all the time for cancer and your body's releasing it, then you think, oh my God, I have cancer. And then people treat themselves. Or they do more tests and be like, well, that was a false positive, that's false negative. How does that even happen? How does something that exists doesn't exist based upon a test? False positive, false negative. It's because it's the algorithms. It's the parts per million. Okay, we'll get into that because that's also what has completely escaped people, is understanding parts per million, and they get all fearful of shit. And so the parts per million of cancer cells were maybe more one day because the body's releasing, but then other days it wouldn't be. And so then they have to do even more extensive testing and more invasive testing, and that's where people screw themselves. Literally, they screw themselves because they're so fearful. Oh, yeah. Okay, so let me read in response to this. So I wrote this about, so there's these 4 chicks in this post. No, there's, I'm sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there's a bunch of people. Pictures that I've taken, the photographs from the Die Suddenly groups. So there's a Colombian actress, Alejandra Villafañe, passed away after fighting cancer. Playboy model, Tabby Brown, passed away at age 38. A mother has started a new business in memory of her 31-year-old daughter who passed away after a brief fight with cancer. A mother of 3, an NHS nurse who passed away unexpectedly in her sleep. A mother of 3. You see people dividing themselves and multiplying themselves out of existence. A 2-year-old happy little girl passed away suddenly at her ghoul home. I guess that's somewhere in... Okay. All right. In her ghoul home. Is that else? Oh, a 15-year-old high school football player passed away after experiencing a medical emergency at practice. Sherika de Armas, a former Miss World contestant, has passed away at the age of 26. So even the beauty queens are going to be subject to this because they have predisposed issues. And there's so many traditions in that family. All right? And that's here in Ohio, too. There are a lot of beauty queens out here, but there's a lot of traditions out here. And so I wrote this, and someone responded, but I won't say the name. You can see that. The main takeaway, long story short, the system isn't screwing you when you think about it. I mean, it is, but you allow them to. The system isn't forcibly screwing you. The system isn't raping you, okay? Families are literally screwing themselves, and you can't sell that to the world, especially when the world is built on family. People cannot see the forest for the trees. And I'm just tying everything together because I brought in Universe 25 and everything. So extinction through reproduction. Certain genetic lines will be more influenced by extinction through reproduction than others. Pure Neanderthals don't exist anymore because they were screwed out of existence by modern humans. You can literally screw someone to death, and you can literally screw a genetic line out of existence. And that's how people get screwed out of life. That's why it's a war out there, and even in families and in relationships, peaceful or not. That's why it's a war out there. And you can't see the enemy because you can't see the forest for the trees. And that means an expression used of someone who is too involved in the details of a problem to look at the situation as a whole. The congressman became so involved in the wording of his bill that he couldn't see the forest for the trees. He didn't realize that the bill could never pass because he got so involved in the minutia, which is all the activist world. They're afraid of food, water, and air and everything. They don't see the bigger picture at all. Now look at your friends on Facebook who are so intolerant, selling you everything under the sun. The weakest people will be screwed out of existence, literally. The weakest people will be screwed out of existence, literally. Cancer equals fertility / reproduction / life. Parents, live, matter. Family leads to death. Sorry I had to say it. Because before you were able to have a family because the system allowed you to, but now as the system keeps heating up the atmosphere and so many other things are going on with climate change, that in the future by 2045, everyone will be infertile on some level as far as sexual reproduction. But if you are at a point where you are fertile for reproduction, then you're going to have a cancer or disease or have so much growth that you can't release, right? See, that's the thing with the whole J world. You're not going to... Well, I haven't had a period since since a couple months ago. Since was it June or July? Or August? Is it July or September? Is it August, September? Well, right now it's 10/23. I haven't had a period for a couple months. Okay, I haven't had a period. So unless I go and injure myself, I'm probably not gonna drop an egg. Just simply having growth in my body and bearing shit babies every fucking morning says that I don't have to bear a child to carry on the genetic line because I'm developing growth, which is called mitosis. And I'm feeding it. I'm not starving anything in my body, and I'm shitting every fucking morning. And when you're crapping out a lot of microbial growth, you're using the same prostaglandins that are pushing out the demons, whether it's in sexual reproduction or in diagnosable conditions when your lymph nodes are leaking or when you have, scales on your body because your body's releasing the demons on your skin. Okay? And so family leads to death. Sorry I had to say it. So you want to have your kids be the best copy possible. You want to be the best copy possible. If your kids can't seem to level up to the atmosphere and to the food supply and to all the different changes, the weakest ones are not going to make it. The strongest ones will. And that's why my sister and I were kind of pitted against each other, because my mom wanted to see who was the strongest one. Obviously, I was the strongest one because, well, this is the whole J world. I have no kids. I don't have any diseases. I don't have any issues. I'm non-really sexual. That's kind of the nature of what's going on right now. And so when you contrive a situation that would happen anyways, which I'll get to that later. I'm getting ahead of myself, but that's okay. When you develop a situation that would happen anyways, you see who will come out the winner. Then you can predict every other situation that's out there. Okay? And so that's why you have to understand 9/11, understand Lahaina, understand all the different things that are going on. When you contrive a situation that, yes, is real, or could be speculated to be not real, okay, because we don't know about, people talk about crisis actors, and Alex Jones went under fire for that. But no matter what, you see how people react. You see what people's reactions are. You see what people do in reaction. You see what their behaviors are. You see what their thought process. You see what already comes out. What's already there has come out, has been teased out by an activity that may have been contrived, not organic. But if you allow things to happen organically, there could be all out extinction. You think if they allowed January 6th to happen organically and they resisted, if the government resisted in January 6th, there would have been a lot more casualties than what was. So you see what I'm saying with this whole contrived situation? You'd have a lot more casualties if you allowed things to happen organically. You don't want to be living in an organic world when there are people who are literally out to destroy somebody else. And so this whole organic versus synthetic has been such a psychological operation that you really want synthetic, you really want contrived, you really want someone to have already tested the cause and effect, the intention, the outcome, the specific measurable result. You want someone already having those gone through the testing process, the double-blind studies, whatever, right? You don't want organic shit, because if you get organic shit, it's called Darwinism. It's called you going hand-to-hand combat with somebody who's stronger than you, like a fucking giant. So, yeah, and this is some, I'm telling you, man, when you see the bigger picture, oh my God. And so, did the system borrow the Egyptian pharaoh's ways of population control by employing Imhotep's ideas? Yeah, when Imhotep is cutting into someone who may have been anesthetized or not, I can't imagine what's like for the first person who had the first anesthesia practiced on him, and then he woke up in the middle. Oh, fuck. I can only imagine how barbaric shit was way back in Imhotep days. So if Universe 25 always came out to be a total rat extinction, then the only way humanity would survive from rampant reproduction or aggressive fertility would be from a controlled decline. Yeah, you're in it right now. You're in a controlled decline, and you have a choice to redirect if you get out of your own way. And there would have to be a multi-generational buy-in. The only way you're going to know the answers to any questions is if you deploy experiments. And they have. That's what the whole Universe 25 was. Because how could you get the grandkids to get on board sending grandma to oncology unless the parents bought in? See, now this is where when you have multi-generational families who are buying into herbal remedies and concoctions and detoxes and elderberry syrup and family and all of that, right? That's not difficult to take down a whole genetic line. When your grandkids are encouraging grandma to not only starve herself because she can't handle food because the symptoms are too much and she doesn't know how to cough things or blow her nose, but then also recommend countless treatments. And so now you have a multi-generational buy-in. There are ways to redirect, but somebody has to be the strongest out of all of those generations to finally save their genetic line by staying alive. And that's a formidable war when the war against you is perpetrated by your own family. Remember the Manson family. And when your family loves you and hates you to death, it's very difficult to walk away because you're resisting something your whole life because they hate you and you hate them. And that's what you're working from, is the hate from your family. Like, remember how much I had an issue with my mother. My whole life has been resisting everything she ever taught me. My whole life. Everything. Proving her wrong. Well, guess what? That was either going to save me or was going to destroy me. Okay, but at least she gave me the gifts on how to save myself. She didn't give me the J world. I did it myself, but she gave me the tools. She gave me the access to the tools to figure out how to evolve. She didn't completely pigeonhole me and program me like some parents do. They pigeonhole their kids into intolerance, and they pigeonhole themselves and pigeonhole the world around them into intolerance and one thought process, one-sided point of views. And so when your family loves you or hates you to death, so it's very hard, it's very difficult to reject people's love. Oh, believe me, I have. Because I'll tell you, as soon as I wanted to get out of that love and do something different, they came after me and were like, oh my God, you shouldn't say this, you shouldn't say that. And they were like up in my ass. I'm like, dude, just chill out. And they're like, and then the love immediately turned into hate, just like that. You saw how the mods were way back when. They all loved me. Oh, the J world's so great. Oh, you're the next best thing. And then all of a sudden they all turned against me, just like that. It was just right on a dime, spun right on a dime. It was crazy. And so when your family loves you or hates you to death, it's very difficult to walk away because you're resisting something your whole life or you're buying into something your whole life, and neither is survivable. The strong side of each family member is going to live if they walk away without destroying anybody in the process. And you can walk away without disappearing. It just means you will not do the same things they're doing in response to disease. And you might even have to stay home more than not. You might have to say, no, I'm not going out and partying this weekend. I'm going to stay home and release my demons and sit and be miserable in my pain. But I'm not going to bitch about it because everyone around you be like, oh God, go to the doctor, go take this, go take that. No, but you understand that you need milk, meat, cheese, eggs, fruits, and vegetables, and you need to pull out the crap, and you need to sit and look at the rashes on your arm, and they're not open sores. They're not, completely protruding and leaking out pus. But, you have to deal with, like I have under my armpits, a little bit of rash, and I don't treat it because the lymph nodes are opening up and they're releasing the demons, okay? And you may be on your own a lot more than not. And I said, note, high rates of fertility comes from natural and synthetic antibiotics, drugs and alcohol, surgeries, oncology, and plastic surgery, aggressive sexual orientation. And it doesn't matter what type, whether you're the giver or the taker, everyone's releasing their demons. And you can see that the physical makeup of the people who are together. You see the bigger guy, like my husband's bigger and I'm smaller, but I know how not to let my husband cannibalize me. Oh, believe me, if he could, he would. I wouldn't let him. Because you know how men are nowadays, especially out here in Ohio, men are huge. This is the land of the giants out here. They were bred to eat meat, milk, cheese, eggs, do hard labor, and have fucking hot women wives. Or they're out there, in corporate America, playing the corporate game. Middle management. And they have hot wives and a bunch of kids, a slew of kids, and they're going to church. I mean, it's pretty easy to see the kind of people out here in Ohio. Not a bad thing, it's just how they were programmed. But, yeah, even in gay relationships, you see there's the one that takes it and the one that gives it. They're both releasing demons, but they're also releasing themselves, and they're destroying each other, mutually assured destruction. That's LGBTQ, that's the straight world, is mutually assured destruction. But could you tell them that? No, because that's what that their hormones are running them. And they've built then a great life, whether it's traveling, going out to dinner and partying with people and having pets and maybe even children. They built a great life on mutually assured destruction. That's why it's so hard to see my information, because you're like, oh, well, look, parties and nice food and pretty costumes and traveling and all this. And so, yes, it's great to see all the great things, but in actuality, your whole world is based upon mutually assured destruction. It's temporary. You'll fuck each other out of existence. And it's not very difficult to destroy people with pleasure, especially if they chase after pleasure so much because you gave them the opportunity and they couldn't control themselves. That's why I'm just like, oh, this is some interesting, I'm telling you. Okay. And so then somebody responded. Okay, somebody responded. I won't say her name. I mean, you can see if she's, yeah. She goes, so if I'm understanding her here, I don't know her, but my grandkids will be sending me to oncology, and she goes, shaking my head. I'm not sure how to take that, but that's okay. I'm not worried about it. People take whatever they want to take out of it. But I said, unless you are not of sound mind and body, if you have a chance to fight disease, the system will literally recommend oncology unless you set yourself up for something different. And you would have to agree to it. Remember, family does not want you to suffer by all means necessary, even if it means rest in peace. And since families aren't trained in anything but oncology or herbal remedies, grandchildren will recommend that for their grandparents unless somebody redirects. And it would take a parent or a grandparent. Statistically, most people don't stand a chance when their family is on board with oncology. Studies have reported rates of less than 1% for patients who refused all conventional treatment, and 3 to 19% for patients who refused chemotherapy, partially or completely, 5 to 9. We tend to think that refusing therapy leads to a poorer quality of life as the disease progresses without treatment. Well, that's because they're not recommending food or pulling out the shit. Pulling out the cancer out of your ass. They're taking food away from you and recommending treatment. Are people going to talk about like, oh yeah, pull the crap out of your ass? People don't even think about that. They have long nails. Or they're averse to their asshole because they think they're gay if they put their finger in their ass. I mean, the system figured out every way to make people afraid of their own body. I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's extraordinary to watch. I can imagine somebody who is so right-wing, right-wing in the military, and I'm telling them to pull cancer out of their ass. They're like, I ain't doing that shit. Well, there you go. That's why people will not survive their own belief systems. It literally takes one person to walk away from the traditions to save the whole family genetic line, even if you lost 90% of your family. Unless you're not of sound mind and body, if you have a chance to fight disease, the system will literally recommend oncology unless you set yourself up for something different. And you'd have to agree to it. Okay? And so, however, the diet suddenly would have cost the cancer industry billions of dollars in the future. Okay, so now oncology might actually be a thing of the past because if people aren't suffering from disease because of all that growth and they don't know how to deal with pushing it out, then if they just change the climate like that, when they see a lot of disease in the population, they can cause that much growth and people die suddenly. And then it's like, and that's what's going on right now. People who are dying suddenly in whatever manner, whether it's through human error because of choices or because they couldn't handle the environment because their genetic line didn't give them the opportunity and the traditions. That's what's going on. These frequency changes are happening every fucking day. Like even today, it was like 42 degrees right now, and it's going to be 60 or 56, and it's going to be 71 by the end of the week. We're going to have another round of people who are going to be dropping like flies this week. Who's it going to be? It's anybody's guess, right? But we all know the weakest people are not going to be able to live. All right, so there's that. So oncology will not be in the future. It'll be died suddenly. Like literally died suddenly. Now let's get into parts per million, which I'm fine with because I hate seeing people suffer. So if you die suddenly, that's better than watching you suffer, right? I mean, it sucks, but when someone dies suddenly, it doesn't matter anymore. They're not here anymore. Who's suffering? Well, people around them, but then maybe that should be a lesson to you that their lifestyle and belief system has caused them to be that weak that they die suddenly when a new frequency changes. And you can study people who die suddenly, what their lifestyle and belief systems are, and you can make a choice. They are your examples. Emotionally driven people who are not scientifically trained have this type of logic, and they don't understand parts per million. Okay, so I've seen all over Facebook this whole thing with this experiment with a plant. You take water, put it in the microwave, and so that water that's in the microwave gets radioactivity. Okay, radioactivity, okay. Okay, so the water in the microwave gets radioactivity. Then you put the water in that plant, who is now completely immersed with radioactivity. There's no nutritional benefit in that water. Like there's none. But that's a plant. That's a small little plant. But then they made that comparison that you as a human doing anything in the microwave, you're going to end up like that plant. That's human logic right now who are so fearful, who are dying. Is they compare themselves to vegetables and they compare themselves to plants and they even compare themselves to animals. Because again, human farming is all about getting people to fuck each other to death and produce offspring to be experimented upon. And also to be social capital, a plaything, a pet. People's children can be their pets many times. When they're lonely, have a child, right? When they have nobody in their world, have a kid. And so what happens to plants given microwave water, and they're like, well, maybe you shouldn't be using the microwave. And I said, humans are not plants or vegetables when intellectual capacity is representation as a plant, is represented as a plant. You get this logic. And Audrey says, yeah, people do the same thing when they talk about what pesticides do to insects. We are not insects. Haha, and she's right. Also, the argument that hazmat suits are worn by the farmers were used in those pesticides, therefore we shouldn't eat anything with pesticides. Actually, there is no comparison at all, because of course, if you are in continuous contact, then you need to be protected. The fluoride argument is the same thing, yeah. If I just jumped into a vat of pure fluoride, yeah, I would die. It's all acid. But when you have parts per million, this is where the holistic, emotional, empathic, love religious people fail to even bring science into the world. Science doesn't exist for them. Emotionally driven people who are all empathic, who are not scientifically trained, have this type of logic, and they don't understand parts per million. So ppm, parts per million. In science and engineering, the parts per notation is a set of pseudo units to describe the small values of miscellaneous dimensionless quantities, e.g. mole fraction or mass fraction. Since those fractions are quantity per quantity measures, they are pure numbers with no associated units of measurement. Okay? And so, as difficult as it may seem on the surface, converting parts per million, ppm, to percent volume is actually very simple. Think of 1 ppm as 1 over 1 million, which equals to 0.00001 or 0.0001%. Dividing it by 1 by 10,000 and then interpreting the results as a percentage will net you the same result. When people are dying, they're very emotional. They can't even see parts per million. Okay, so And people are like, oh, Julian, you're killing everybody with salt. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? First of all, we're not just pouring dry salt into a cup and just eating it. Second of all, even if you drank a bunch of salt water, which people do in the ocean, and even with the J juice, your body is going to be thirsty and you're going to drink water and you're probably going to piss out anything excessive, which is all the waterfalls. And they're like, oh God, all stuff is coming out. It's all your intestines. You see how fucking emotional and idiotic people can be? No, it's called all the shit that you've kept in your body. You're full of shit. That's what's coming out of people's bodies is fucking ropeworms and parasites that were too numerous and a bunch of hormones like acids. That's why their acids burned on their way out, because they had so much of the acidic amino acids like that was in like the heartburn stuff. Remember when I did so much of that Jello after drinking alcohol? When I went to that one party like last August and I was throwing up acid and when I ate a few things of cabbage and I shit out a bunch of freaking acid, heartburn acid. Yeah, people are harboring so much of that crap inside that the salt water activated their immune system. They can release the fucking demons. But you see people characterize things because it's not based in science. It's based in fear and storytelling. When people are dying, they are very emotional. People who love Earth and who are afraid of Earth have some serious issues going on. Radiation is not poison unless you happen to be a lot less parts per million than the radioactive atmosphere, which means you would be dead right now if the environment was that poisonous, and you'd be dead right now if the microwave ovens were that dangerous, unless you happen to be a vegetable or a plant. But then again, people who basically don't have a lot going on up here think of themselves as a vegetable. They're vegetables. What does a vegetable do? They just sit and lie there. That's what vegetables do. That's what happens when people who are dying from cancer. They're a vegetable now. And people who already project that they are a vegetable and a plant, that's what they promote, something like this. And then they have their family. They've divided themselves to such an extent where their whole family and them are that weak that they've projected to stay away from anything that activates their immune system. And also stay away from food as well. So there's circular reason. There's radioactivity here. There's radioactive parts per million here more than I think there should be. And I died from radioactivity or something like that. I died from, it's a whole circular logic. You can Google that, the premise is equal to the whole conclusion. And it's just that's activism, is circular reasoning. Activism is circular reasoning. And when people are stuck in that loop of circular reasoning, you can't get them out because they're dying. When people are dying, you want to stay away from them. So every type of energy is immune system activation. If you can't handle immune system activation on any level, then yes, one day you will rest in peace because that's what you intended. Selling rest in peace is a multi-trillion-dollar business. Now look at your Facebook. Now look at all your holistic friends with their families and children selling you fear and a shit ton of remedies with the intention to deactivate your immune system. And of course, starvation and fear food does not help anybody. World War III is your Facebook, and it's your friends and your family. That's World War III. You think out there what's going on in the Middle East is World War III? No. In the West, World War III is trying to survive your marriage, your friends, your relationships, your family, your job, your associations. It's trying to survive the world that you are around. And that's why they call it the Hunger Games. People are so fucking hungry right now. They're cannibalizing each other like Neanderthals. Oh, it's extraordinary. I have to actually laugh because that's what's going on. And so yesterday, there were so many sirens going on this afternoon yesterday. I was like, oh my God, it was one after the other. All right, provoking a war. Here we go. When you provoke a war inside your own body, you better understand what it takes to arm your body correctly in order to survive the war within your body and also in your community. Because not only do you have to deal with the war inside your body, but also those who don't understand the war you are dealing with. And so, yes, the whole J-World was provoking a war on their body. Because the mercenaries were kind of like put to sleep through all the different, drugs and maybe some food and a calmer environment, unless it was season changing, like from spring to summer and summer to fall and fall to winter. But the whole J-World activated people's immune systems. I provoked a war in the body. And that's what also the different bombs out there provoked a war out there. It activated the immune system of the world. Now you see who's taking a side against who. Now you see who believes in what and where and what and how. Now you see what people say and do and what they believe in. And now you're seeing the real true colors of a lot of humans on your Facebook that didn't come out until the war came out. See, it's some interesting shit going on. But yes, the J world activated your immune system. And it activated people's immune system prematurely for the system. Because they weren't prepared for that. They were waiting for 2019, 2020. They're waiting for the pandemic, for climate change. I actually preempted climate change. When you think about it, the whole J world preempted climate change. And it gave you enough hope that you could survive the climate change within your body with the J juice. And finally with the food and water. All food, milk, meat, cheese, and eggs. It's got away from the holistic world finally. Allopathic world finally. Realizing there's a place for them for those who are too far gone, that you gotta give them a humane way out the door. But yeah, I gave the world a preemptive, like, what do you call it? A vision of the future. Because you saw the controversy. Now you look at the controversy today, it's no different than the J world. People are blaming the V's, or blaming GMO, blaming the air, food, water, blaming the Jews, blaming the Muslims, blaming the Democrats, Republicans. Okay, so what's going on right now happened back in 2017, 2018, when everyone was fucking at war with each other and with me, and using me as a patsy, which people are using the Jews as a patsy, they're using Muslims as a patsy, they're using Biden as a patsy, they're using Trump as a patsy, they're using everyone around them as a patsy, and to absolve themselves from any kind of personal responsibility. And so we got to see the war before it actually happened through the J world, and that's pretty fucking extraordinary. And so when you provoke a war inside your own body, you better understand what it takes to arm your body correctly in order to survive the war within your body and also in your community. Because not only do we have to deal with the war inside your body, but also those who don't understand the war you're dealing with. But people think they have what it takes to deal with this environment until they die suddenly. What if they provoked a war inside their own body and armed themselves correctly, so that way internally, so that way they when they go out there and fight physiological sports wars, they would survive the events. And so what prompted me to say this is watching these kids who are being groomed into sports, being groomed into scientists, which I understand, being groomed into all these really heavy competition, rugby, footy ball. Okay, do they have the infrastructure in their body to be able to handle that? Or are they going to be like, when they're 27 years old, die suddenly because they cured their disease? Even though they ate food, they cured anything that wants to release because they had to keep the weight on for their weight classes in these sports things. Or they're running themselves to death because they're in marathons, sprinting and all that, and all endurance type of things. So much cardio, like so much, where the RPMs are going so fast and they're not keeping the substance on, and then they lose infrastructure. So are these kids going to die at 27? Are these kids going to die at 16? I mean, how do you know you'll survive the sports that you're in right now? How do you know that? Or are you just throwing the dice? And that's what parents are doing right now. They're throwing the dice for their kids, knowing that these kids are coming from parents who are in deficit, who had dealt with cancer, disease, and chronic illness, not immune disorders, who had other issues, maybe drinking issues, drug issues. And so now their kids are in deficit in a highly accelerated environment, and they're playing sports. How do they know they're going to survive the football or footy ball or soccer or swimming or gymnastics or any of these high impact sports? How do you know they're going to fucking survive it? Unless you preempt the war inside the body, feed the body, and figure out what kind of disease is lurking within. And when the climate does change and then you keep curing the disease with J juice or anything, or remedies or anything else, they're not going to fucking survive. Not when the climate gets even more aggressive and the growth and the bloom is that quick to then bloom that quick, and they die suddenly from a heart attack or stroke because of blockage. Because you disabled their immune system to release the fucking demons. They can't release because you've cured them to death. Or you've done so many RPMs because they're in high endurance things like marathons and all that stuff, and they don't eat that much food because they're in California. And they have to be skinny for everybody. And so, but then if you preempt the war inside, you could be down for a couple of years. There goes your opportunity to compete with your other peers, right? I guess if compete with your peers and potentially roll the dice that you may not survive competing with your peers is more important than actually your life and longevity, That's where parents sacrifice their children for social capital. For not only the child, but also for that parent, because that parent gets so much mileage out of a kid that's successful in sports and academics and whatever, that it doesn't matter if the kid survives that lifestyle. It just matters that the parent gets whatever mileage out of it. That's some vampire shit. So what if they provoked a war in their own body and armed themselves correctly internally, so that way when they go out there and fight physiological sports wars, they would survive the events? But they would have to know you could survive your own internal immune system before you fight other people or compete in sports to win. And so the picture below, which is, what is it? Oh yeah. A 14-year-old Daisy passed away after suffering a viral infection. Oh yeah. Texas teen dies after collapsing during cross-country meet. That would scare the shit out of people. And this guy is pretty burly, you wouldn't think. Another kid. A 27-year-old rugby player has passed away following a cardiac arrest during matches in Cambridgeshire. I think that's like in, I don't know where that's in, England. And then tragedy strikes a sophomore high school student, collapses and passes away after 5K run in Tarrant County. Now we know these come from diacetyl groups who are blaming the V's, which, okay, that's one factor because it's growth. You got penetrated by a needle, develop growth and offspring. Now you have to release the demons and assimilate. But it's not only the V's, it's also those that doing all the remedies and the ivermectins. So you see those in the diacetyl groups recommending all the different detoxes, causing then more offspring, more growth, more fertility, of which then will end up something like this. And so that's why there's no difference in the diacetyl groups with the V's and the holistic people selling you a remedy and a supplement. You're still developing fertility and growth. And so the picture below, people are finding out their children are not equipped to deal with the war inside their own immune system, as well as sports. Right now, they don't have enough artillery to support them in two wars. Children are literally fighting two wars. They're fighting an internal war and an external war. Not only are they in deficit, but they are afraid of food, or they are eating so much that their body has no time to process and release at the level of growth and development. Right now, children and adults are spreading themselves way too thin. And so they die suddenly. But you can't tell them anything because they do not believe in climate change and they don't want to change, and they're trying to keep up with everybody around them. Skinny athletes and big burly athletes with weak vital organs will have a hard time in this environment if they even survive it. Parents who know their medical history know better than their children what could potentially happen if they're willing to face the reality. So parents who know they have heart issues, lung issues, vital organ issues, and they have kids who inherited the same stuff, is it really wise to push them into all these really aggressive sports? Or maybe it's time to have an intellectual, mature conversation with your kids if you even have any kind of parenting, parenting bone in your body. Because some parents are like, whatever Johnny, Billy, Susie wants, I don't care, fuck it, whatever. They're my social capital, I can give a shit. And up there are parents out there like that. They don't care because they're going to pass away. So if they can get the mileage out of their kids like that, fine. And parents who know their medical history know better than their children what could potentially happen if they're willing to face the reality. But you can't sell people on what ifs because they want proof. And if death is proof enough, then it's too late. So I guess if you want proof that your kid can't survive the environment because of your predisposed issues, I guess so be it. If death has to be the only proof to know that you can't survive, your kid can't survive this environment through their different aggressive habits, then that's why it's not going to fucking matter at this point. Because they want proof. You can't sell what ifs, right? You can't sell what ifs. So they have to go. And so, but then someone will be like, oh my God, they see their friend die. Well, we're not the same. We have from different backgrounds. See, that's the thing. So people don't even learn from people who die around them because they're like, oh yeah, they're different. And they have so many different circumstances. Oh yeah, and that's true. I guess if you're not willing to provoke a war in your body to see what kind of shit's lurking in your body, then I guess you will be rolling the dice. And look at how many people roll the dice. They gamble on their lives. They gamble on their children's lives. They gamble everywhere. They gamble on the fucking stock market. That's why you have to laugh now. Because now people ask me, well, how do you prove indefinite life, Jillian? Well, because I provoked a war in my body and I survived all the fucking wars. I didn't treat any of my diseases. I pulled out the fucking shit. And when the climate does change, I feel the hives. I was itching on Saturday night. And I was snoring so hard. My husband even took a recording of it. He was saying he never heard me snore ever. Because I never really snored. People are like, well, snoring means you have a blockage. Yeah, because I had a lot of infection, but it wasn't like bad. I snorted. I was tired on Saturday night, but I was still hanging out with him too. But that infection was left the next morning through my poop. But how do I know indefinite life? Because I've provoked wars. I did the J juice to provoke a war, obviously, in body, mind, and spirit, and in the economy, and in the world. And I survived it, learned my lessons in the court system and all that. And then when the climate change came around the last 3 years, how did I provoke war? Because I didn't really treat it. I didn't treat it at all. I fed it. So how do I know that I could probably live indefinitely? So as long as I don't send off a freaking atom bomb in my town and be the epicenter, that maybe I can survive a nuclear blast like maybe 2,000 miles away. But yeah, I definitely think it's possible as long as the environment can hold life. Because I know how to manage entropy and negentropy. I understand how it works. Because I already provoked the war. I already fought the fucking wars in my body. And I stay away from dangerous people. And I don't put myself in situations that are compromised. And at this point, I don't even want to fly anywhere. Because you never know who the hell you might... at this point, you just... Right now, as the system is heating up and things are going the way they're going, I'd rather just stay home, stay safe, study, go locally someplace, not spend too much money, and eat food and survive. Because, yeah, we could be on a World War III because other nations are getting involved in the war in the Middle East, and America might be pulled into it. And so I don't want to be subject to somebody's attacks, whether it's out there in the crossfire, because they're like, oh, look, you're an American, you're back in Israel, I'm going to destroy you. So if you're overseas somewhere in a place where you're not home and someone sees that you're American and you're a target, or you're going into a temple, you're a target, going into a mosque, you're a target, going into any group of activities, you're a target. I just stay home and stay safe because I know how shit works. And I'm actually conditioned myself to like being at home. I love being at home. I fucking love it. I like being on my own. I love it. Okay? And so that's how I'm able to predict indefinite life, because I provoked wars and I didn't treat anything and I still survived it. Because I could have died. If I hadn't done that, I could have died even last summer when I was so suffering from that mycoplasma that completely enveloped my whole body that I could barely even bring my dog outside. Okay? That's how I know indefinite life is possible, because I already tested the wars in my body. I already played that game of what the system does, contriving wars out there to see how people react, contriving arguments out there to see what people buy in, what they react to, and what they say. Oh, I get it. I get it psychologically. I fucking get it. And I even get the whole V world, because they're bringing out what's already held inside. You already hold the disease inside. They just activated what's already in your body. The arguments out there, the events already have activated what people already hold inside, their belief systems, their trust issues, their trauma. And everyone is showing their cards on Facebook. Everybody is. It's extraordinary. It's fucking extraordinary. And so sometimes provoking war means not treating any disease if you have the body for it and release process. But again, you would have to know if you and the support system around you can handle your war you are going to wage within your own immune system. You'd also have to consult a professional if you feel you cannot do it alone. And you would have to know how to cough, sneeze, and blow your nose and open up your immune system and understand what your immune system is meant for. And if you have a hard time understanding what your immune system is meant for, then you'll have to treat your disease until there's nothing left, and then the system can't treat you anymore, and then it's too late even for my information. You couldn't do my information as a Hail Mary. You couldn't. And that's what Bruce Wilmot tried to do, is my information at a Hail Mary after he has been destroyed by his own friends and family and the system that he bought into. So my quote: you cannot sell life to those who are adamant to die someday or run the risk to be blamed for any deaths now or in the future. Gillian Epperly, 2023 AD. Proof: medical, holistic, energy, healing, drug, therapy, vaccine world, and all food, air, water, electrolyte world. People are blaming all of those worlds for all the future deaths, as well as the deaths today. All right? And so you cannot sell life to those who are adamant to die someday or run the risk to be blamed for any death now or in the future. And so you're seeing it in the die suddenly groups. Someone said, oh, they got a V a year ago, and the person died today. They're like, oh, it was a V a year ago that caused their death today. And you're like rolling your eyes because you can't say anything anymore, people. You can't fucking say anything to anybody anymore. The irony is people will blame their own life for their death, offspring stuck in their immune system, also known as disease and cancer, but it will be always somebody else's fault. They will even blame their own genetics. Irony. And that's religion. That's politics. That's even people's dogmatic sciences. Welcome to humanity. Because even when you're right, you're wrong. And when you're wrong, you're right. Okay? Okay. Okay. I said this before. All right, hold on. And certain intolerant genetic lines will not survive after many years of sex and reproduction and climate change. Even certain pure hominid lines were screwed out of existence over many years as their purity gets diluted through evolution and change. Sometimes you get a stronger organism or a weaker organism that cannot survive the environment. Now look at who is surviving each frequency change and who is passing away or suffering from diagnosable conditions. Each time your immune system is activated, you already had the disease within you. It was only a matter of time before it was finally expressed and realized. You can blame who you want for immune system activation, but life is understanding immune system activation. And if your intent is to deactivate your immune system because you can't handle the immune system activation, you set yourself up for a die suddenly when all the conditions are right. And so what I did this weekend by just scratching and eating food and sleeping gave me another chance for a longer life. But someone in that same position who treats the hives and mitigates food and does not sleep because they have to go to a party, they're laying the groundwork for a diet suddenly. That's the difference between my information and longevity and someone in the mainstream and an alternative mainstream who will die suddenly and blame somebody else for it. Now look at your Facebook. Okay? And so I already said about the high rates of fertility. But then you can't destroy a person outright, but you can give them choices. You can develop scenarios to see what they would rather do and what they would do if given the opportunity. And you give people an opportunity to do what they intend to do in a controlled situation. And you also see how they would react and characterize things in a controlled situation. That's World War III. Your reactions are showing your world your cards. The world your cards. In other words, your denial and reaction shows the world to what you would tolerate and what you would do to somebody if given the opportunity. And so you see people who are hunting humans, who are showing their intolerance around the Jews of Israel. If they're acting like a Neanderthal, they would go and cannibalize that person and destroy them if given the opportunity. And that people are showing that when they do those type of like bombs, those pipe bombs. That's why Israel has to be armed to the teeth, because they know people have that kind of mentality. And there are people in other countries who have that same mentality of archaic Neanderthal hunting human mentality. It's even in America and the West, that they would destroy and cannibalize someone if given the opportunity. The sides that you take in politics, religion, and science shows the world what you would do if given the opportunity. When you finally understand all sides of the story, you might escape being a casualty of World War III. And whatever happens in all different violent acts of the world would have happened anyways. But if they happen in a controlled situation, the world can see what kind of people are out there and what they think and what they do and how they operate. Now you can choose which side of history you want to stand on, because everything is hidden in plain sight. In other words, when you provoke a situation that's going to happen anyways in an intellectual way and an intelligent way, not only could there be less casualties at the macro level, but you could live through the situation at the micro level. The strongest organism will survive. The strongest and the most tolerant will survive. The weakest organisms will be screwed out of existence, literally. Now you see why OnlyFans, hot gay sex, and hot chicks exist. So people literally screw each other and release themselves out of existence. Remember the porn industry and the fight for families, right? Large families. Now you know. Save yourself. Parents' lives matters too. The J world exemplifies at the micro level, provoking a war in your body that could potentially win if you understood how to respond to it. Okay? Let the governments out there provoke the wars out there, and you just stay out of harm's way. But you have your own war in your body, mind, and spirit and community that you must survive, or else you'll eventually be a casualty of World War III because you cannot tolerate change or evolution. However, if you choose to provoke a war in your body, please allow a doctor to assert whether or not it's appropriate for you, especially if you've been under a doctor's care for many years. And so the picture below, rest in peace, Angel Hernandez. He reportedly collapsed after crossing the finish line and was subsequently taken to a local hospital where he passed away. He died age 16. 13 October 2023, Texas. This is in Texas. Cause of death unknown. Yeah, died suddenly. He didn't have what it takes. All right. And so when you're saying humans, the greed for social capital diminishes. You can't sell life to people who are adamant to die because they will blame you for their death, for their future death. What's the root of all cancer, disease, and death? A closed immune system in a diverse world treating disease, all types of disease, all types of treatment. The offspring destroy the parents, all parents, even parents with no children. You are parents to the juvenile cells in your body. The aging process. Juvenile cells destroy the parents from the treatments and diversity in the environment in a closed immune system. And so I said, my world is a long game, not the short game. A few hives last night, boy, were they itchy, and that was the night before. And they disappeared yesterday morning. Growth must be properly released. It was so relaxing with hubby yesterday, or the day before. Every untreated growth that's allowed to release the next morning, and even during the time of itchy energy, is one less factor contributing to a potential future disease. Every untreated growth that's allowed to release the next morning, or even over time, is one less factor contributing to the potential future disease. Every single time you treat something is one step closer to future disease. That then you almost have no choice but to completely treat it and put yourself further behind the 8 ball. In my opinion, if you have a stomach for it, start today by not treating any disease. If possible, talk to your doctor. Because untreated disease with proper release and all food will put you further away from the death trajectory because you need food. But remember, you must eat all food, even the food you're afraid of. And of course, proper release, open immune system. I'm 49 years old. I started this 7 years ago. I will tell you right now, it's way too soon for people to really understand me. I realize it's going to be more than 10 years for people to finally get where I'm coming from. Right now, all I am to people is someone with good genetics, right? I'm Asian, right? Hardly any damage to the body, which is probably true. A scaredy cat of the public. Well, hell yeah, I know what's out there. I've seen some crazy ass things out there. A trauma victim with mental issues. Just because I went through battle to train for Battle of the Worlds doesn't mean I'm a trauma victim. It means that I was trained in a battle, that I survived it, which means I could survive the battles out there. Okay? But they don't realize the kind of fight I had to go through, publicly and privately, physically and mentally, and I had to feel everything that my body needed to release. You can't sell that to people. I can only observe my own experiences and give hope to someone who is not that far gone that maybe they could survive their own trauma of the medical, surgical, holistic energy healing world. And I will tell you, because I was invited to go to speak on somebody's podcast, a doctor who is also a Christian, aggressive Christian. They're like, hey, we'll give you time for 30 to 35 minutes to speak on our podcast. Respond if you want to take part in this. And I was like, I kept it on my email for a minute and I thought about it. I didn't respond because I'm like, I remember what it was like interviewing with other people before, whether it was an hour, but it wasn't my narrative, it was their narrative, or if it was like 15 minutes. It was either a system of ridiculing somebody else, or it was a system of being ridiculed. And I will tell you, 30 to 35 minutes for any interview is not long enough time for someone to interview me and my information in a completely objective way. A half an hour is only good for someone trying to sell a remedy or endure 30 to 35 minutes of public ridicule. No interviews for a long ass while, and I will not be your human sacrifice. My information takes time to not only explain, but also to exemplify. This is not a wham bam thank you ma'am. By the way, most people are selling you a remedy of some sort. They are a spokesperson for health products out there because that's a major moneymaker. And I mean a major moneymaker. That's a depopulation agenda. With that said, interviewing me would not serve them well to have me on their podcast unless they're controlling the narrative. Because if they would have given me a chance, I would completely wipe out their audience when I tell the world the truth about the remedies and the supplements and the surgical detox industry. Especially herbal remedies and all the detoxes and supplements. And my information takes more than a minute to understand. More than a half an hour. I have over 7 years of controversy, and even with my dog. Oh God, I can only imagine what they say about my dog, right? People want to cover. I wouldn't have the time. And if I did, I couldn't control the narrative unless I was given license to. But my Facebook, I control the narrative. If you want to help your audience, send them to my Facebook. Not set me up on your podcast to destroy me because you know you have an audience to cater to. And many people are out for blood, and your audience will find a way to use me as a patsy for the world's problems and for their own problems. They're like, oh, I'm suffering because people like you exist. I can see that from somebody from an audience member. I'm suffering because people like you, Jillian, exist in this world. Oh, I can hear that. I can hear that. I know what people think out there. They think they're suffering because I exist in the world that they live in. That's not only racism, that's discrimination, but that's also what Neanderthals did when they cannibalized their enemies. Because they didn't eat, I mean, they ate each other, but why would they eat each other? Because someone crossed them. They wouldn't eat their friend, but they would eat their enemies out there in the Neanderthal world, right? That's the nature of humans today. They're looking to nail somebody to the cross. And it doesn't matter who they are. If you even breathe differently, they will nail you to the cross. Many people are out for blood right now for so many different reasons. I mean, many. And so now when I get trolls, whoever they are, I tell if it's because I'm Jewish or raised Jewish, if it's because I have the J world and they don't like immortality and whatever, or they think that I hurt somebody, or they believed all the stories out there. I don't know who hates me now. Why? So now it doesn't even fucking matter. They're out for blood because they're looking for a patsy for their own fucking miserable life. That's the nature of humans. They're always looking for someone to blame for their own miserable little fucking life. And I will not be your fucking patsy, and I will not be your fucking savior or semen, or semen, or Satan. And so, yeah, this corporate person said that she gets rid of people who are negative and toxic and chronic complainers on their Facebook. And of course, yeah, I get rid of them too. All right. Oh, yes. So here it goes to Canton, Ohio. It also makes sense why the Football Hall of Fame is here in Canton, Ohio, the land of the strong, gorgeous, intelligent, potentially brutish giant humans. Canton, Massillon breeds many famous professional football players. Pretty cool and interesting. Strong people over here. And so, yeah, this is on the heels of they had a Canton Massillon game, or yeah, McKinley against Massillon Tigers, and Massillon completely just wiped the pants of the Canton McKinley people. And so, like, what, 35-0? But a lot of the football players in professional sports, they come out of Canton, Ohio. Like, there's some big brutish dudes out here. Like, big dudes out here. Giant fucking humans out here, okay? And they get funneled into the NFL, the AFL. It's, yeah. And so, yeah, so high school football is huge in Ohio. And it's definitely a tradition. There's a faith, family, and football is out here in Ohio. It's quite interesting. It's pretty cool. It's very interesting to see. And of course, the hot cheerleader girls. So now you see, we're living Disney out here. Prince Charming, who's in football, and then the princess, who's like the hot girl, who's the head of the cheerleader squad. All right. And so I already read that. And so, yeah, so my information, my world is a long game. It's not the short game. Okay. This is the long game. And so I don't mind if 20 years later down the road, they talk about what happened in 2017. I don't care. I'm not in any kind of time frame. I'm just trying to live and survive what's going on. And so if you want to know the history of why the Israelites exterminated the Canaanites and the giants and all that, you can watch these YouTube videos. Watch that perspective and make your own choices, okay? I'm not trying to make anyone convert it. I don't want to convert anyone. Just do what you want. I don't care. And so I'm studying the Ottoman Empire and all that stuff. Oh, Ohio, land of the giants, potentially strong Nephilim bloodline. Nephilim was probably gorgeous, strong, brutal, could be ugly when radicalized. Consider the serial killers and other crazies were born or lived here in Ohio. So I took that a comment from someone when they said that, why are so many horror movies set in Ohio? So remember, when I came here to Ohio, when I first got here, and I came out here, like when I first got here from California, and I told Jason I was coming here, and I got here, and I was on the salt flats of Utah. I said, I'm on my way, and I had a Craigslist roommate set up, which I'm glad never happened. But when I said, hey, Jason, I'm on the salt flats of Utah, and I'm coming out here, and there's no going back, I'm coming out. He was like, holy shit, well, here's the address. He gave me the address, I put it in my GPS. It took me a few days to get there. I think I stopped in Nebraska as an overnight. I think I slept on the side. I think I slept behind a convenience store and one night just to get a few hours sleep. But I ended up coming here, and then I ended up going through, which is down here in Ohio, it's like Cherry Street, and I ended up going from down as the south side of Canton, Ohio. And so I was going past like the projects, And I'm like, oh my God. And these houses, they look like stuff you see in horror movies, like the Amityville horror movies. You know, it was so surreal coming out here. It looked like something that you see like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I mean, it was just like, oh my God. Yeah, I didn't realize what I was entering into, but it's okay. I mean, I'm entering into a different world, a different time, a different place. Totally different. Totally. But I remember, and just going past, the projects off of Cherry Street and going past that, and then it ended up, to the houses to the right were all spread apart. It's all farmland and farms, like Amish country, when you think about it. And then to the left was like the rows of houses, where not a rows of houses, but a few houses. And I was like on a little house that had a barn. And when I looked out my window, because even my old profile, my old account that I abandoned, but people can still see it. There's pictures. Those who are friends can see the pictures, or maybe if they're open, I don't know, of when I first got to Ohio, and my first look of the countryside through my kitchen window. And it was just all like horse barns and farmland, and it was just so different. It was so fucking different. God, so different. And so consider the serial killers and other crazies were born or lived here. Jeffrey Dahmer grew up in Bath. Charles Manson born in Cincinnati. That was kind of crazy. Jeffrey Lundgren, Kirtland, and Ariel Castro kept 3 women captive in Cleveland home for 10 years. Anthony Sowell murdered a number of women, and those were real. And then, of course, Wes Craven is a Cleveland native. Okay, so I came into an interesting world. Okay. And here's this about Parents' Life Matter too. Jason and I are watching right-wing Christian YouTube videos. That was on Saturday. Pro-life people need to stop using oncology and natural or synthetic remedies. Anti-human life is in the medical, holistic, natural healing world. The use of antibiotics is anti-parent over time, causing cancer and also fertility. Parents' life matter too. Touche. PLM. Aging process is microbial offspring cannibalizing your insides. Oh, and this is where I figured out. See, I told you sex and reproduction can destroy families and individuals. There's evidence of violence among Neanderthals, the 40,000-year-old Neanderthal skull. And it says, new study says humans killed Neanderthals by having sex with them. That makes sense. They screwed them out of existence. That makes freaking sense. That just clinched it. Okay, I'm not going to go through all this stuff about modern. Okay, that's a lot. All right. All right. Does Mike say anything more about this stuff? No, that's a lot. You guys can do your own study. I'm studying for myself. As far as history and the cradle of stuff. Okay. More frequency shifts next week. Imhotep. Jubilee every 50 years, plus then the seventh Sabbath year, every 7th Sabbath year, plus every 50 years is an economic, cultural, environment, and a communal reset when the land and people rest, and all those who were in slavery are set free to return to their communities. The number 7 yet again. That's the Jubilee in Ohio, the land of the giants. Okay. Okay. The health and wellness vet industry is a buffer between your humanity and the bloodthirsty monsters within. Let your humanity win, not the monsters within. All right. Okay, now I could go back. Oh, geez, okay. Yeah. I'm actually over this right now. I don't really feel like bringing up these emotions about pets. We're just going to leave that for right now. But yeah, we're going to have to redo some stuff here. We're going to have to redo some stuff with the vet system and the surgical system. Okay, because... yeah. I'll tell you what happens when you have to turn to the surgical system is because people are developing growths from all the antibiotics. That's why there's so many surgeries, because of the amount of antibiotics and the lack of release in a closed immune system forces vets and forces the surgery system to exist, because those growths come from antibiotics, from all the different, and from so much diversity. People are taking in people's microbes and they're not releasing properly. And so they develop these growths that metastasize because then they're disabling their immune system to release, and their animals' immune system to release, or giving their animals antibiotics and things to stop it from releasing, and they're not giving them the proper nutrients. Okay, and so then these growths happen, and then they're forced to go get something surgically taken out, and they get butchered. And that's what I have an issue with. But I had to see it. So I don't have those emotions anymore because I understand where it comes from. It's from the massive amount of growth from the antibiotics and the massive amounts of diversity without the proper release process and the starvation. It's a whole huge thing. So that's why I'm going through incrementally all my emotions around it so that I can be non-emotional and more factual and logical in my process of developing this. Because if you develop a book around emotions, then yeah, people get lost in the emotions. They don't see the actual facts of what's going on. So I'm not going to read that. Okay. All right. And that's all I'm going to say about this point. Bible, Old and New, Grimm's fairy tales, and Greek, Roman, and mythology, all that. Okay. And so I think that's it. Oh, wow. I'm finally... That was some pretty good... You guys are awesome. I thank you guys so much. So I have to think about this, okay? Because I got to write this in a non-emotional way. I literally have to write this I have to get all my emotions out and my issues with everything about the society. I have to get it all out. So that way, when I finally write this, what fuels me is logic to give people choices, because I can't save anybody, and to give you an understanding through science and allegory where we came from and where we're going and what we're trying to do, okay? And why we are in these wars, because there are people out there who are that intolerant, who will destroy you if given the chance. If you weren't armed to the teeth, you'd be destroyed by somebody who is going to hunt you and cannibalize you virtually, verbally. And that's why we're in these wars. And so if you're America and you're in the West, be very fucking careful following somebody in a third world country who has an axe to fucking grind because of lack of education and so much big, huge family that weakened every genetic line. They can't handle anything. And they're projecting their weaknesses onto you in the West. You in the West have access to food, water, air, meat, milk, cheese, and eggs. And you are being given choices. The people in third world countries don't get a lot of choices. And so they are out to destroy. Be very careful who you follow. All right, bye.